May I thank the organizers for the invitation to come to this very prestigious event and speak to this prestigious panel on what I think is a very important topic. We heard some very interesting things in the first session. Challenges, opportunities, but what struck me most was the constant references to the political will to make things happen. Before I turn to the discussants, let me just say a few words about the current economic situation. Frankly, some people may find it a bit strange to be talking about a long-term project of the nature that we're talking about against the backdrop of what is the worst economic and financial crisis since the 1930s. There are some very bad things going on out there. Is it right then to focus on these supply side issues like transportation? I think the answer is yes, and I want to tell you why. But first, let me make three very brief points about this crisis and what it is that we are all facing. The first point I want to make is that this is a credit-driven crisis and is different from normal crises in that respect, that it has been credit-driven, there has been too much money printed, the regulation has been poor on the banking side. That's item number one. Item number two is that, fortunately, everybody is to blame. This is a crisis that is all across Europe, basically because the creditor countries like Germany, Finland, and others lent money on an unprecedented basis to countries who could not in the end afford to service it. And frankly, the same thing has happened at the global level, because the creditors, again, Germany, Japan, China, Korea, have lent money to people like the United States, the debtors, the United States, Canada, and my own country, in a profligate way. And both of them are to blame, both the suppliers of credit and the demanders of credit. The third point that leads me to, and I guess it's pretty obvious to everybody, is that this crisis is by no means over. It will continue. It's been going on for 5 years, and there's more to come. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but I think it's true. Does that mean then that a panel like this is in a sense unnecessary? We should forget about all of this stuff until the crisis is over? I want to say, from my reading of economic history, that the very opposite is true. That when you look at history, what you see is that projects of this sort, supply-side projects, trying to increase the capacity to produce, have often been at the heart of the recovery from crises of like the one we're going through. So if you go back and you look at the United States in the 1930s, what you see was there was a massive increase in productivity from innovations in all sorts of different areas, but most specifically in the railway area, which surprised me, frankly. The volume of rail freight in 1941 was exactly the same as it was in 1929, but they did it with somewhere between a third and a half less rolling stock, which is pretty incredible. And when you think about the United States in the 1870s, and maybe it was the same thing in Russia, the building of the transcontinental railways, the building of the Trans-Siberian Railway played an enormous role in pulling countries out of the Great Depression of 1870. So my judgment is this is a topic that's really worth talking about. And I would also note, and I'll finish with this, the golden age of the railway was 100 years ago. But I think there are grounds for belief that we may be going back to another golden age for the railway. Now, why do I think about that? One, because of the technology. We know we've got the technology now to make rail transport work a lot better and a lot cheaper than it did before. Secondly, we have congestion everywhere. Congestion in the air, congestion on the roads, and even this morning I heard congestion in the ports. Rail travel is a viable alternative to that. It has also been mentioned that rail is much more environmentally friendly. And Lord knows, in the context of global warming, more and more attention is going to be paid to this, and the externalities for other polluting forms of transport will be taxed ever more heavily. And lastly, I was surprised to find that somewhere between 5% and 1% of all of the freight travel between Asia and Europe goes by rail. Only 1% to 5%. Obviously, there are enormous opportunities here for profit, and opportunities for profit, not just for the railways, but for the people that make the railways, make the rolling stock, make the locomotives, etc. So there's both huge opportunities and huge challenges. Well, let me now turn to our speakers. We don't have so much time, so if I could ask the speakers to confine themselves to between 6 and 8 minutes, that would be very, very helpful. I understand that some speakers have slides. I do have a slide changer here. We'll have to pass it up and down. So if I could ask the speakers then to confine themselves to 6 to 8 minutes, that would be absolutely terrific. Well, let me begin then by turning Mr. Androsov and ask him to give us his initial reflections on the opportunities and the challenges as we look forward, and not least, as someone mentioned earlier on, any special challenges associated with the introduction of the WTO in Russia. Mr. Androsov.
Спасибо, господин White.
Thank you, Mr. White. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. At the end of my presentation, I will answer the questions asked by the moderator, but I would like to veer away from this topic at the beginning of my presentation. I believe we can do this for 3 reasons. First, our forum has here many people who are ready to speak about it more professionally than myself, and we have had a very interesting first plenary discussion. And the second reason, I quite agree with the statement pronounced by Mr. White about the new golden age for railways. But this golden age will require a complete rethinking of the relationship between RZD and our counterparts and a complete change in the attitude of the government in terms of infrastructure building. And we understand that any development of the east-west Trans-Eurasian corridors is only possible if we change our attitude in the principles according to which we build our infrastructure. And I would like to dwell on this during 5 to 6 minutes. And I would like to mention a few ideas which worry me. Of course, we will not find a full answer to all these questions. After lunch, we are going to have a very interesting presentation or discussion to be moderated by Mr. Mikhailov and Mr. Lysin. And I think we will answer those questions at that discussion. Regarding infrastructure development, the Russian Federation has made a key solution which determines further development of railway infrastructure in Russia. The government was at the moment when it was to make a choice whether to have some government authorities dealing with infrastructure development or start a fairly risky experiment, split these activities between government and private companies. The government made the choice for development, for a growth model, and competition became the key word in this model. As a result, we created the open joint stock company RZD. Russian railways. We all understand that the main goal is to make profit or increase its market value for RZD. But there is one special thing in our case. 100% of RZD shares are owned by the Russian Federation, which means that shareholders such as the Russian Federation can have different goals and different objectives, such as the development of special industries, development of regions, guiding macroeconomic parameters, maintaining and keeping inflation in check. This is quite the opposite of merely gaining profit. Besides, we are regulated by the Federal Tariff Service, and as a result, the business model which we have in our company is actually quite admirable. Currently, we have also the authority which is called Rosimущество, the property authority, which requires that we privatize RZD quickly and provide big dividends. The Ministry of Transport, another authority, has its own objectives in terms of transport and geographical development, which sometimes contradict to other goals. The Ministry of Economic Development provides us with restrictions in terms of tariffs because we understand that RZD plays some role in inflation. The Ministry of Defense worries about the quality and reliability of military transportation, but no commercial effect can be gained from such transportation. And the Federal Tariff Service, which also regulates our activities, is now preparing a comprehensive document, which is a very fine example of 10 years of economic compromise. Nevertheless, all those contradictions were created in the sake of competition, and one objective was achieved. We determined the wagon component, and currently wagons are on the competitive markets, and currently the operators have the great opportunity to renovate their wagon fleet. And I think this goal, the innovation of the wagon fleet, the modernization of the wagon fleet, was resolved. But strange as it might seem, we are currently involved in other activities, infrastructure, providing for the transport process. But there is no competition in this activity. We can improve the quality of the transport process endlessly, but we do not compete with anyone. We just have the regulators. And the key point here is where we can take the funds from to develop this infrastructure. To put it simply, I would name 4 most important sources. Of course, our infrastructure is very dilapidated, and because of the economic transformation that Russia underwent over the past 20 years, we currently have new geographical directions and new property structure. It's obvious. But we can actually take money from all these sources to fulfill our infrastructure needs, regardless of the sections where we carry out those infrastructure activities. The operators can pay certain tariffs for using the infrastructure. Western countries live according to this model. Besides, we can take money from those who need it. We understand very well the operators of the Far Eastern ports or some other ports. If there is demand, if there is cargo to be transported, we believe that cargo owners are ready to pay for this. This is the so-called project financing model. We understand that the future freight transportation flow can help us to find the funds and find the compensation for those costs on infrastructure development. The third model, government funding. If the government is ready to provide certain geographic limits, there is a huge amount of tools such as subsidies, investment foundations. We have the capability to use those instruments. And there is also the fourth option. I hope we will be able to discuss it in detail at 5 p.m. today. This is a combination of private companies and AZD, a partnership between AZD and companies which are ready to partly finance infrastructure development. Here we come to the idea of a network contract. I do not want to go there in great detail right now. It needs a very detailed discussion. But there is also the argument of the need to improve our own operative efficiency. This discussion goes on endlessly, and I don't think we need to discuss it right now. Actually, our topic today is the choice between those four options, those four models I have described. And I hope that our forum today can provide certain recommendations or at least some ideas to follow, and to provide those recommendations to the new government. So I would suggest that we have this agenda for discussions, and I will be happy to answer Mr. White's questions later. Thank you.
It's a very useful introduction, particularly the aspect of funding, which I'm sure you'll be coming back to. May I turn now to Mr. Sidonov, please?
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. I also like to say a couple of words about the infrastructure development. And from my side, I would like to confirm that we are currently considering different financing options for the infrastructure. Also, we do consider some combination of these options, and everything is aimed at enhancing the railway capacity. Today, I would like to say that we have a certain shift of the cargo flows. And if we compare it with the amount of freight to volume of 1988 was the peak value in the Soviet Union. So now the increases of 75%, so the freight volume doubles during the last 25 years. So in this case, we need to explore new markets, new opportunities for the infrastructure development. My colleague already said about the opportunities in this area, but I would like to point out an interesting thing mentioned by the moderator in the beginning. In the United States in 1929 and 1941, the freight volumes were the same, but the number of cars in 1941 was 30% more than in 1929. The same situation is in Russia now. We have more cars available for this amount of freight. This is a result of our reforming. We also got some private operators in the market, and we also started seeing investments into the fleet. The production of cars in the CIS countries was 120,000 new cars. It was a record figure of the last year. In Russia, we manufactured about 68,000 cars. It was actually twice as high as in the best year in the Soviet Union. So the reform of the railways brought to increase demand and the development of the engineering industry. because the situation when we have more newer cars, it also leads to additional cargoes. If there was a when there was a lack of cars, we use the cars for more profitable freights on more profitable routes, and currently we're exploring the less profitable routes. So probably any freight which needed to be transported is being transported now. Taking into account the competition with the deep sea, so the transports for the car operators are less profitable than the others, but the excessive number of cars leads to a situation when the competition is also quite high. I can assure you now that the transports are getting even more and more attractive for private operators and carriers. What do we need else to do to develop the transports in order to provide this Tranship in 7 days project? These solutions are technically complicated. In this case, we need to invest in the infrastructure and change the technology we use. And our company works very close with seaports, with the border crossings, with the custom authorities, and we want to make these interfaces in the way that the freight spend as less as possible time on the border. So in this case, we probably need to consider the improving of the customs formalities within this customs union. Probably we can introduce a special customs procedure for the transit cargoes. It could be also the customs insurance for the carrier in order to exclude any additional procedures at the cross-border points. First of all, I'm talking about the containers. Today we're currently implementing a project when we can transport some parts for the BMW plants in China from Europe. And we can only welcome this experience and enlarge it. However, the BMW has a significant experience with Russia. They have their own plant in Kaliningrad where they manufacture a great number of cars, and the BMW is well aware about the conditions in Russia, and they also know very well AZT and any other carriers and operators in the market. So the BMW is very well aware to transport their goods and freights to third countries via Russia. However, not only global companies have an experience with Russia. Sometimes they are also afraid of the security for their freights transported via Russia. And I think in this case, in order to increase the awareness in Russian transit way, I'm talking about the Trans-Eurasian corridor, we can invite to our market well-known global insurance companies in order to make them aware of our technologies, of all the procedures happening with the cargoes in Russia. They can also ensure these transit transports via Russia, providing a certain assurance to the shippers, to the freight receivers in the west and in the east, that the freights can be delivered on time and not damaged and not stolen. We compare the sea transport way and the railway transport way in terms of price. We will know that the sea way is cheaper because the modern container ships have a very significant capacity. So in this case, it's quite cheap to transport a container via sea. But sometimes time has more value than the price. That's why the railway allows to deliver freights not only to the seaport but also to the consumer. That's why our Trans-Eurasian corridors are an optimal solution here. In order to develop all these capacities and potentials, we started working on development of the seaport infrastructure, started developing the cross-border checkpoints, especially in Zabaikalsk. We also are developing the Trans-Siberian Railway. Unfortunately, the efforts are probably not enough, and the government should pay attention to the financing sources for the infrastructure development, what was already said by Kirill today. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for your attention. I'm ready to answer your questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, particularly for that reference to the successful experience with BMW. And I'll go back to Dr. Grube in a few minutes and ask him to perhaps give you some more details on that. But for the moment, let me go south to Mr. Maman from Kazakhstan Railways. We've heard a lot of talk about different corridors, but of course, in the end, if there is to be some unification of these corridors in order to reap the profits, some interests are going to have to be balanced off against other interests. So let me turn to Mr. Maman and ask him about the developments in his area about the Trans-Eurasian network and what the objectives of their exercises are. Mr. Maman?
Thank you. Уважаемые коллеги, в первую очередь хочу
Dear colleagues, I would like to thank the organizer, first of all, of our business forum for a fantastic event, because we are able to discuss very interesting and acute topics. And development of the transport between Europe and Asia is probably one of the most important questions and challenges for us. We have been talking about it since the morning. We're discussing the conditions needed to develop the transit transports. The World Bank statement says that the trade turnover between Europe and China was more than $520 billion, and in 2020 this trade turnover should be more than $800 billion, so the growth will be more than 50%. This is probably a good base to develop the transit transport between Europe and Asia. We have carrying out a great policy. For the question about the balance, we have a great policy with our colleagues, with Mr. Yakunin. We work together on a common policy and are often meetings give an opportunity to identify the balance of interest needed to implement such significant project as the development of the railway transport between Europe and Asia. Solving the objectives and tasks with the use of our geographical location of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan found a new way here. Our president, Mr. Nazarbayev, announced the start of this program, and the Kazakhstan was identified as the operator for this program in order to increase the capacity of the railway, in order to use our geographical location. Our company is being given our assets from other industries, from other companies. We would like to accommodate all these resources and assets under one umbrella. These are assets at the Caspian Sea. These are sea transport. These are airport infrastructure. These are road transports. Probably all the means of transport are now accommodated under our umbrella. We also are developing our transport to China. Probably you knew that we commissioned actually the second interface with China, and we're expecting the commissioning of this interface from the Chinese side, and we'll also increase the Kazakhstan-China border throughput up to 70,000 million tons a year. We have one existing interface between Kazakhstan and China, so we will open this second cross-border checkpoint. This Halkin Hall will allow actually to have more transport due to the better infrastructure. We have a very good example of our cooperation with AZD, with Belarusian railways, with the Deutsche Bahn. We have also a route from Shenzhen to Duisburg, and it takes 16 days from Shenzhen to Duisburg, and this result is very good. Certainly we do have some reserves here. We can also work on it, and we're also working. However, today we already achieved the reduced transport time for the freights from China to the center of Europe, and when by sea it requires 45 days to deliver the goods, and on the railway we can do it in 16 days, and we need to develop this product. It's a very good example, and nowadays we're working with the leading logistics centers and industrial areas in China, and we're negotiating the improvement of these routes in order to increase the transit capacity on this route from China via Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus to Europe. Kazakhstan is doing a lot for development of the infrastructural projects. At the moment, we are constructing new railways, new infrastructure, and the total amount of this middle-term project is more than $5 billion. Middle-term period is from 3 to 5 years, and we're also planning to invest more than $40 billion into the railway infrastructure. This is actually the solutions we normally make at the international forums within our unified railway cooperation with Russia and Belarus, and will also make the railway transport more attractive for the customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. May I turn to Mr. Solzhenitsyn then, please? Apparently McKinsey has been doing a lot of work on rail transport in Russia, and we'd be very interested to hear your views. Mr. Solzhenitsyn.
Спасибо.
I would just like to give some comments to our discussion for the East-West corridor, and then I would like to talk more about the priorities in terms of railway industry management. As for the corridors, we talked a lot today. I would like to remind you, today the railway transit is 1.5% of the whole freight flow from Asia to Europe. Certainly, railway transit cannot substitute for the sea and aviation transport. Probably in this case, we need to identify an objective in terms of percentage. Everybody understands what we are fighting for. The UIC assessment says that we can reach 78% by 2020 and 10% by 2030. These are the last reports of UIC. I think it's quite an aggressive scenario, and we also thought that in reality it could be 5%, but in this case you can see the significant growth of railway share in this freight flow. Certainly different countries will fight for this growth. Some routes are via Trans-Siberian railway, some freights can go via Kazakhstan because the speed and the transit conditions are quite important here. Today we also heard data about the speed. I will also give you a couple of figures for your common understanding. We calculated on the example of a container of laptops transported from China to Europe, just the poor cost, transport cost for this container, $3,000 and $4,500 by railway. The working capital that is employed here because the sea transport time is long, we could also get back $1,000 out of this working capital thanks to the railway transport. And another quite important fact is those laptops or PCs, if you spend one more month on the way, they can be sold at lower prices. So for some of the products, this delivery time can also have a significant impact on the final price. And here we have to talk about the so-called niche products that probably we need to develop, starting with this our electronics, the automotive spare parts and components. We also consider it within our cooperation about the capacities of the eastern direction. In Russia, we're talking a lot about it because everybody understands that this direction is at the moment significantly loaded. The forecasts are different, but everybody agrees that from the 2 days, 95 million tons that are delivered in Russia eastwards, the demand can be even 115, 130 million tons by 2015, 2020. And we need to know how we can meet this and satisfy this demand. Anymore, we have 60, 70 train pairs in this direction, and we have only 3 to 4 container trains of these 60 to 70 trains. And if we want to develop the container transport much faster, we will increase the number of container trains up to 10 or even more. At the moment, there is another problem. Even if I can identify the targeted volume, and we can also get an expected number of container trains, and we can also know the exact loading in the future. But if you look at the current container flow from Asia to Europe, but the containers from Europe to Russia are empty at 50%, so it also creates additional bottlenecks and jams on the Trans-Siberian railway. So we get this situation when we don't have an overall picture in the Russian railway and in the country, what capacities we need for this Europe-Asia transport. Certainly we need to increase the capacity, but we don't know exactly to what proportion we need to do it. And however, everybody agrees that we are going to have some risks that we won't be able in some years to transport all the freights because the current investment programs are not approved. And then as soon as the investments are approved, we should start the designing phase and the implementation. I would like to discuss the following actions. Our new government on this modernization, the management through the KPIs, what is already written in the presidential decrees, and the Prime Minister is talking a lot about it. We need to regulate the railway transport to make it more systemized. We just need to use the objective stars, KPIs, introduce a monitoring system, and set the common rules for everyone in the market. So we need to manage through the meetings. Because at different levels in Russia we have a lot of meetings. Sometimes we can have solutions at these meetings, and sometimes these solutions are not linked with each other. I think it's quite a new method of manual management, but everybody understands that such area as infrastructure, it is quite difficult to change the course depending on these or those discussions. So for the sake of the government, we need to we need a network contract that will identify the future for the 3 or 5 years. They will identify how many transport the government needs, what speed of transport is going to be, what the level of rate will be here. Do we need to include the investment part into this rate? Will whether any subsidies can be provided or not. I think if you don't have this 3 to 5 year horizon, all the discussions can remain just discussion. The second element is the RZD motivation. RZD is a natural monopoly, and the management doesn't really understand completely how to motivate the top and middle level management. If how can we increase the efficiencies when the rates go down? For example, if you exceed the conditions of the network contract, how much money you can leave for your own development RZD? Because at the moment we are talking about the RZD potential to decrease the cost of sales. For example, if you decrease the cost of sales, the rates won't be increased in the same proportion. Because in the West there are solutions of vehicle level management. They are working on the cost plus method. Another element is we need to create an integrated development plan for the Far East. And probably I think you can agree about the common picture. We have a lot of ministers, Minister of Economics, Minister of the Russian Far East. Here we need to take the interest of the shippers. They can want to transport a lot, but if they ask the shippers whether they are able to sign the take or pay agreements, and this we need this dialogue. We already started this dialogue. However, the discussion about the guaranteed amount of freight is quite important here. We need to give a choice to the shippers how much it can cost for them when taking into account the development of the infrastructure. We need to spread the investments for the whole network, but if we just include these investments in a certain tariff or rate for a certain route, it can involve not only RZD but also the shippers from the coal companies and the mining companies. And the fourth element is in our investment program we are discussing a lot how to improve it. So probably we need to approve really short-term measures in order not to have any additional bottlenecks on the routes. And then we can also keep doing this integrated discussion. Thank you very much. These were my comments.
Thank you very much. It's useful to be reminded that the management process of actually getting things done is every bit as important as the design of what it is that you want to do. So I think that was very useful. Let me turn now to Dr. Gruber from Deutsche Bahn. Reference has been made to this corridor that they have been using to ship BMW parts to China. And I guess I would like to ask them why it's competitive for you to do that, and what lessons you think others can learn from your success. Please.
Partner Vladimir Yakunin. Thanks, because in the end, Vladimir, business is highly dependent of people. And this special route, which we have created together with many partners, was only possible because there was the right entrepreneurial spirit. But frankly speaking, I'm not only happy to be here, but even more happy that we are not only talking about ideas, that we are executing. Because everybody knows 20% is strategy and 80% is execution. But in order to be successful, mid-term and long-term, because I'm not focusing on short-term issues, because we are talking about the business of BMW and bringing CKD components from Germany to China with all our partners around the world. Colleagues, that's not enough. By far not enough. It's not sufficient. That's only the starting point, because in this respect, I'm quite happy because today we have created until today, roughly 100 million revenue between each of us. And I think the worldwide economic crisis has shown that this is a great opportunity for rail business, because the name of the game is cash in the tash. What does it mean? Today, we have to create business always coming from customer demands. And our overall target must be to create a customer advantage. Because in the past, if I'm focusing on BMW transports, we needed, and it was very often mentioning today, 46 days per ocean freight. Today we are doing this 23 days. And for Hewlett Packard, for the computers from Shanghai to Duisburg, in the past we did it with 32 days. Now we are doing this in 60 days. But this is by far not enough, but it is a good starting point. And this was only possible because customers asked us how we can create a customer advantage. And the main advantage is in cost cutting of capital cost by 50%. Because if I'm reducing the time by 50%, that means immediately cutting the cost by 50%. And this is the biggest advantage. And again, that's only the starting point. We have many, many challenges, and we have to make it more efficient. But what is now needed? At first, I think quite decisive is to reduce further the time of transport, because each hour, each day costs money. Secondly, we have to ensure that safety, security issues, and availability of the trains and wagons are possible, and availability must be the best. So the benchmark must be for us the focus. Thirdly, I think continuous improvement every day to make it even better than yesterday. This is a great, great challenge. And last one, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask everybody, especially from the politicians' side, to give us the right support, like we have it already in the air cargo and in the ocean freight, because we need only one freight letter for rail business. Because today we are losing much time only for administration. And I have also one additional big request. Competition is important and decisive for me. Also, regulation is very important. But don't over-regulate the market, because then you will kill business. Thank you very much.
Let me move a little west then and ask Mr. Polak from Polish Railways to say a few words. One thing in particular, I guess I'm interested in is his views on these corridors and competition amongst corridors. But anyway, Mr. Polak, please.
I would like to say that the works on the East-West corridor have already started in the mid-90s. Already before entering the European Union, we were using the European funds for upgrading and for the renewal of parts of the connection between East and West, because from the very beginning the Commission was certainly interested in connecting Europe with Asia. We see on the map a number of corridors which were signed in 2005 as corridors for ERTMS, for European Railway Transport Management System, composed of two main components: one for unified way of exchange of information between train drivers and the dispatchers and signaling people, and the ETCS, the European Train Control System, which is intended to ensure full safety for all the trains running over the corridor. This is the standards which are applicable all over Europe, including the corridors east-west. The corridors have been developed in many, many different parts. We know that the East-West corridor is the most developed one in Europe, but it is developing faster and faster. You can see a number of works which have been done at the corridor, and you can see that the corridor is supported by different funds, not only from the European side, but also from the side of the Polish state budget, from the credits taken from the European institutions, and from the own sources of Polish rail. The corridor was, the investments were done not only on that corridor, but also on some others. However, focusing on that corridor, I'm leaving 2 dedicated slides which are showing the budgets which were used and the scope of works which were done. And you can see that we are really preparing the routes for the east-west connections. Based on that, the European Parliament, together with the European Council, have decided to prepare a 913 regulation on trans-European corridors dedicated for freight. The corridor F, which was pointed as a basis for ERTMS implementation, was taken as a basis for one of the freight corridors. As a result, we have a direct cooperation of all the infrastructure managers from 5 countries, starting from the seaports at the North Sea, up to the Baltic states and up to the eastern Polish border, to offer a high quality, high capacity, high safety for all the freight forwarders and for all the railway undertakings willing to use it. At the moment, we have nearly 50 freight railway undertakings offering the transport services all over the Polish network. At that basis, we can say it's possible to use it not only for east-west connections between Germany and Poland, but it is from Western Europe to Baltic countries, to Belarus, to Russia, and also we believe it will be also connected to the Ukrainian border. Taking that as a basis, we have already agreed all the border points. We are working on the co-financing from the European funds of a detailed market study. According to the regulation 913, we have 1.5 years for the market study, which will show all the needs that have to be fulfilled to allow a successful implementation of Euro-Asia freight corridor. The corridor, I believe, will be really ready as stated in the European regulation at the end of 2015. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Clearly there's a great deal of activity taking place. It's not just thinking and planning. May I finish the interventions? May I finish the interventions from people from railway companies with Mr. Magonis, and then I will turn to the 3 other speakers up here who are actually from the manufacturing side, and perhaps get some observations about how these plans will have an impact on their businesses. But before that, let me turn to Mr. Magonis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Да, действительно, наша тема это.
Yes, our important activity is transport corridors. Latvia is is a small country, but it has an important location. We had 59 million tons of cargoes last year, so we really have great freight volumes. Our transport corridor is important because it starts as a railway, but the end of the corridor is at sea, and various European countries and American and Asian countries also use this corridor. We, as a participant of this corridor, have only an 870-kilometer section of this track starting from the border of Belarus to our main ports, including Riga and others. To Riga, it's a bit more than 200 kilometers, and to Lepa, it's a bit less than 500 kilometers. So the cargoes moving along those corridors travel a distance of 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers. We only cover a small section of this corridor, therefore, but we feel that we do have an important role to play in this corridor, also including of the price policy, because some of our competitors have higher prices, and our customers are interested in us providing not only good but also cheap services. And based on this, we undertake a lot to invest in our infrastructure. To make our work rapid in terms of wagon turnover, wagons should not be detained on our railways. They should be returned quickly. But here, the problem is that we work so well that now there is the problem with capacity. We can't resolve this problem alone because the throughput capacity is not just our parameter, but the parameter of the whole network, including Belarus and Russia. So we believe that we are now at a point when we cannot deliver all the cargoes. We need investment and concerted effort from all the parties. But at the moment, this is a serious issue. We have already raised this topic. This is the issue of money, and we never have enough money. So now we have to think how to move on further. And as I've mentioned, the corridor covers a lot of countries, and without the participation of all countries, without a general understanding of how to develop infrastructure, on what conditions it should be financed, it would be difficult to build, or rather to offer a single tariff. All of you probably know that we have a large experience in organizing container transportation. What we began in 2003, setting up Baltic Transit, which united 3 railways. We also have the Baltica Transit 2 train, which delivers cargoes from Kazakhstan and Latvia. We also develop the corridor with NATO cargoes to Afghanistan, and we believe that the market of container transportation is very big. But if we take the actual Asia corridor, Asia-Europe corridor, then again, we are not a monopolist here. Actually, the competition is quite tough, including with automobile carriers, sea carriers. The container takes a longer time to be delivered by sea, but the price is of essence here. And we have to resolve the same issues here. Developing infrastructure which results in more costs, and as a result, the tariffs for transportation should be raised. And if they are raised, then of course, competing with the sea transport or with the automobile transport would be very difficult because, you know, in many countries the government pays for road building, for maintaining roads in proper condition. And of course, those who use railways actually have to pay for the railways themselves, and those who use roads do not pay for those roads. So the competition is not equal here, and we have to remedy this situation in the future and get this single approach, because I know that in Germany there is one situation, in Latvia a different situation, in Russia a third one, but without understanding from the government that money should be invested in development of rail infrastructure, because railway is very efficient, very environment friendly, this money will be compensated for. If we take Latvia, 10 to 15% of gross domestic product is provided by transit, and we need to invest more in infrastructure to have even a greater compensation. We need to build a single approach to infrastructure maintenance, because otherwise we will not be able to obtain single tariffs and it will be hard to work. So I suggest that not just our government, but also the European Commissioner, because Europe has recently been developing its own corridors, but it does not understand always that Europe is also, that Latvia is also a European country, and for us, the most important corridor is not the north-south corridor, but also the east-west corridor. And Latvia is interested in it, so we have to maintain that corridor. And if we know that there is not enough money in Russia either to maintain those corridors, we have to seek for common understanding and invest in our infrastructure on behalf of all countries. Thank you.
Well, let's turn to the manufacturing side of things. We have three people here with us today who I think can make a very useful contribution to this. Mr. Muller from Siemens, Mr. Sienko, and Mr. Pompiansky. And I would like to turn to those people in turn. I guess my principal question is, what opportunities do they see, not just for the production of currently produced things, but for research and development and moving on to significantly better ways of doing things? And I would remind you my comment earlier on about the 1930s in the United States, when there was actually a massive expansion of research and development, in spite of many of the job losses elsewhere. It's something that's not well recognized. And that research and development really paid off as the United States moved forward after the war. Well then, let me begin then with Mr. Muller, please.
Спасибо, уважаемые.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear moderator, it's a great honor for me to present my slides to you. This is the 7th time I participate in this forum and to speak not only in the audience of customers, but also strategic partners such as AZD, Deutsche Bahn, Kazakh Railways, Polish Railways, all railways of the 1520 area. Along with the challenges we have mentioned, I would also like to note that in October last year, we had the 7 billionth person living on our planet. They say this person was born in Moscow or in some other city of Russia, and this confirms that our population is increasing. In 2030, about 60% of people will live in cities rather than 50 now, and then it will be 70%. You know, in Beijing, there are 20 million people. 5 million cars, but only 2.5 are parking spaces. And we all know that in Moscow, the situation is not better. Siemens is currently building a strategy to respond to various challenges, particularly the challenge that has been mentioned here, developing more efficient transport. How can it be implemented technologically? The global trends are urbanization, the shift in territorial focuses, the change in climate, demography, and that is why we are really obliged to develop efficient infrastructure, including railway infrastructure. A few examples. You know that to meet those challenges in Russia, Siemens supplied Sapsan, the high-speed train. Which provides services from Moscow to St. Petersburg and Nizhny Novgorod. And I think this is a good example of high reliability of rail services. We are very pleased that we also have other examples of infrastructure development in the area of rolling stock. Yesterday, we presented for the first time new regional trains we made it possible to move from Sochi to Adler on this train. And these trains really meet all the requirements of modern transport. I think this is a big step forward. I remember us signing the first memorandum. So this project was actually implemented within 2 or 2.5 years, because we signed the memorandum in 2008 in summer. These trains will be manufactured here in Russia. And I have to thank my friend Dmitry Pampansky, with whom we formed a joint venture for producing not only those trains, but also locomotives. And we are facing another challenge. We are planning to localize the manufacturing of these trains to the level of 80%. But there are also other proposals: automatization of rail transport, electrification, and automatization of buildings, railway stations. All of this is related to innovation. One example is sorting yards to prepare trains. And these sorting yards largely determine competitiveness of any means of transportation. Modern sorting yards made it possible to process 6,000 wagons per day. That is an increase in efficiency by 30% without using any additional truck. we have improved the quality and have eliminated the possibility of damage to freight or wagons. The reliability is very high, more than 99%. Another example is modern systems for rolling stock management, such as ALS 400. It's very important if we talk about high speeds, up to 400 kilometers per hour. What is also important is innovation in electrification. It's important for energy efficiency, for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and lower cost of life cycle of products. Siemens has very compact traction substations, and we can therefore reduce the cost of these structures by 15%. Electrification is particularly important if we speak about high-speed services. Siemens has solutions of up to 400 kilometers per hour, and I need to say we also work in Kazakhstan and have formed a joint venture with Kazakhstan Railways for engineering and design of the electrification systems. What is also important is comfortable and modern solutions for railway stations. Yesterday, we saw the railway station in Sochi. It's important for advertising of rail transport for passengers. Here we understand where the trip begins, where it finishes, and we can provide modern automatization systems as well as the risk management systems, fire safety systems, and energy-efficient, comfortable solutions for passengers. In a nutshell, we work with our partners on innovation to make rail transport even more efficient. And I think over the past few years, we showed it, not just with rolling stock, but with our infrastructure solutions, that it's very good for the rail transport. Thank you.
It's very interesting, this complementarity of interests here. We heard before that it's the railways that have to give the shippers what they want, and now we've just heard that the producers of the rolling stock have to give the railways what they want. So this idea of mutual benefit is a pervasive one. Let me turn then to Mr. Sienko, please. Mr. Sienko?
Добрый день, уважаемые.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the forum. I would like to state the followers. Of course, Russia and the 1520 area are huge territories with an enormous potential. And in the 1520 area, there is a number of rail transport corridors which enable transportation from west to east and from north to south. The transit potential of the 1520 area countries is not being used in full. Currently, it's about 2 to 3% of the overall transportation volume between EU countries. It all uses various transport corridors of the EU. The main reason of low use of railway transport is the low communication between European and Asian countries, and we all know that the potential for transport growth for Russia can be up to 15% of GDP, because Russia is a country which transports a huge amount of cargoes. First of all, raw materials, of course. Current competition on the transport market is not between several countries, but between complex technological systems. 15-20 gauge railways compete with other railways with a different gauge, which are situated in Europe, in Asia, in America, in the Asian Pacific region, as well as with ship transportation along the Suez Canal. That is why we need to fully develop the potential of the 15-20 area. The current restraints or constraints which we have today include barriers such as the following: the imperfect system of technological regulation which affects transport safety, unfounded delays when crossing borders, additional taxes and duties levied by the customs, physical barriers, and of course the condition of our railways, insufficient capacities at border crossings, and the outdated fleet. If we turn to today's statistics, the average age of wagons, no matter, even it's not, regardless of our new production of wagons, is 15 years, the average age of wagons. This is an alarming indicator because, of course, we want our railways to be safe. What measures can contribute to renovation of wagon fleet? We understand that one constraint to today's development is the low speed at the 15-20 gauge. When this speed goes up, we will, of course, compete on a very tough market with a huge amount of products. Of course, there are programs initiated by Russian companies, Russian railways. Currently, we have the initiative of recycling our fleet and prolonging the service period of our wagons, which will renew our fleet to 5 years on average. Of course, we work in different countries. We are being ready to fully join the WTO, and we are worried about standardization. In our opinion, to develop international transit via Russia, we need to modernize the national transport network, as well as provide carriers with new generation wagons. Obviously, today, we are standing in front of a big dilemma in our integration, because we are part of the single customs space formed by 3 countries. Russia is the only country which is ready to join the WTO, which is on the threshold of the WTO. And the proper balance between our systems should be found. Then we will be able to work more safely, more confidently. I think the following measures should be made: the concerted investment policy in development of most promising projects, most promising routes, and ensuring integration processes, the building of logistics and cross-border infrastructure. Second, introducing differentiated tariff regulation, which will make carriers economically interested in using new railway equipment and rolling stock. Unification or bringing together efforts and approaches in developing international standards. That's very important for observing the regulations of the EU, as well as the technical regulation on the Eurosec space. Fifth, review of customs and tariff regulation in Eurosec, and establishing through railway tariffs, developing logistics infrastructure, including electronic document turnover, preparing and harmonization of systems for forming trains and optimization of railway systems with other means of transportation. This is key to efficiency in our work and reliability. Thank you.
I turn to Mr. Pompiansky, again, sort of on the manufacturing side. Please.
Уважаемый господин председатель, спасибо.
Dear President, dear participants, I'll try to be brief. The topic of our today's discussion is the Trans-Eurasian corridor and the 1520 space. Of course, Russian railways plays an important role on this space. We have heard many arguments throughout this session and the first session for developing this space. It's very competitive. It's very promising compared with other means of transport. There is great potential, and there is political will, as we have heard, and our representative from the EU and Deputy Minister of Russia mentioned it. The question is why we are not moving forward in this direction very quickly. Frankly speaking, this topic has been much debated over the past decade, but we have not yet implemented these ideas on large scale. I would like to turn your attention to the fact that we need to approach this issue while dividing two viewpoints. So, first, this is the problem of Russian railways as a company. And second, this is the problem of the Russian Federation, its development, its strategy as a whole. We know that 100 years ago, there was political will to build the Trans-Siberian Railway, which played a huge role in the development of the Russian Empire as a whole. So, as mentioned by Mr. Kirill Androsov, we need to understand that maintenance and modernization of existing infrastructure is the task of Russian railways. And this can be financed from the profit of the company, from some loans. But if we talk about strategic development and the synergy effect for the country, of course, this is an issue which has to be resolved on the government level. And we hope that the new government will make all the necessary decisions. One excellent example, our customs union partner, Kazakhstan, as mentioned by Mr. Mamin, and I also participated in one of Kazakhstan meetings a week ago. So in Kazakhstan, there is a great system, very clear strategy for development of the country. This includes rail transport, sea transport, pipelines. It's very obvious how transport is going to be developed and which monopoly needs to do what. So I think Russia needs to also think about it very seriously and discuss these issues specifically. As for the first steps, I think we, of course, need to ask the government to develop this strategy jointly with Russian railways, jointly with the manufacturers of locomotives and wagons. Of course, we have to focus on high-speed services because this is also a strategic step in the country's development to build up all the communications, particularly in the east-west direction, and in developing passenger services. And besides, this is also making freight traffic more competitive. And of course, the planning horizons here are not 3 to 5 years, but these are much more distant horizon planning, up to 50 years. As for our position as a producer of wagons and locomotives, we established a joint venture with Siemens 2 years ago, and this is a successful model presented on the market. It works efficiently on the 1520 space, and we have already made a significant contribution. We have increased productivity of Russian railways on certain sections by 25% by using new technology. A new challenge is the construction of the Lastichka passenger train. As Mr. Müller said yesterday, we could see for ourselves that this is a great equipment, and currently the challenge is for Russian manufacturers to produce it. So I think in 2014, the Russian manufactured Lastichka will be on offer for all passengers. And this will be our contribution. And as a producer of rolling stock, I need to say that we are perfectly ready for the challenges in development of Trans-Eurasian transit. Everything is known, the technologies are well known, we have the people, and we are ready to move in this direction. Thank you.
That is the last of our speakers, and I'm sorry, I'm afraid that given the time, we will have no time for questions. But could I just take maybe 2 minutes to summarize what I've taken away from the morning, rightly or wrongly? I think the first issue has to do with the opportunities that's provided here by a Trans-Eurasian railway, and I certainly saw a lot of optimism. There is increasing requirements for freight. There's huge opportunities given the very small proportion of traffic that now goes by rail, so there's lots of opportunities there. Urbanization is continuing. A couple of people noted that, which means that freight now becomes more viable to do the last mile, or down to the last mile, which is very, very helpful. And we've just heard the last speakers note the fact that manufacturers in Russia are prepared to advance in providing the stuff that's required and in association with foreign partners. So that's all very much to the good, the opportunities. What, however, are the challenges? And a lot of people noted a lot of different things. One of them is there has got to be a major change in the character of the relationships between the partners And that includes both the political partners and all of the various people providing the services, so that there's got to be some combination, really, of competition, providing profits, but yet respect for regulations and for other kinds of requirements. A number of people raised the issue of incompatible standards. And the list actually is, as you all know, is quite long. Legal, which I guess is where we start, regulatory, customs, technical, security, IT systems, safety in the environment. So there's a lot of work to be done. I believe it was Mr. Andrasov who began, but a number of people mentioned it as well. The funding for all of this still is very much up in the air. I think you talked about 4 options that are worthy of further discussion. And one of the other points that was made by one of the panel members, something has got to be done about the fact that rail is not subsidized in the same kind of way as the road systems are. So we're playing in an unlevel playing field, and an integrated transport system, something's got to be done about that. And lastly, a number of people made the point that you need, for projects of this size, you need more and better management, which is not to say that the management to date has been inadequate. I think the point was made here that progress is 20% in the planning, and it's 80% in the execution. And then lastly, we get to the politics of all of this. Schumpeter, the famous German-American economist, was once asked, what is economics all about? And he answered, politics, politics, politics. A lot of people mentioned this issue. We need the political will and the capacity to act. And to do that, we need to have governments and partners who are willing to balance off their issues, balance off their interests, really for the common benefit. So that's going to be a real challenge. And everybody today was saying the right thing, but then the next question becomes, do you bring in actions to support the words? Well, I know that there's going to be a lot more detailed discussion of all of these issues and how you can move to practical steps to make progress here. This will take place during the next day and a half. I wish you very good luck in those deliberations, practical suggestions that you can put forward to the political powers that be, and I wish you all good luck in those deliberations. Thank you very much.